Hi everyone. So we all know why we're here. Vue.js, like who all knows about Vue.js or heard about it? Anybody here can tell me what Vue.js is used for? Anyone? What is Vue.js? Okay, never mind. So basically, we all know what a website is, right? Now, when you create a website, there are basically multiple pages that multiple HTML pages that you line up and you make multiple web pages for the website. But with the starting up of apps and web apps on the internet, that became a bit redundant. Like every single view would have a separate page. So that would be a bit more work for us. That's where Vue.js and all the single page application frameworks come into picture. So we have Vue.js, we have React, we have Angular, and many more. Vue is one of the top three in the market right now, and it's the easiest to get started with. So that's why I thought I'll pick this up. Now, before starting, I would like to know who knows what. So how many people here know JavaScript or like just the basics of JavaScript, like arrays, functions, objects, all those things? Okay, Ritvik. All right. Okay. HTML, is that okay? How many people know HTML? Okay, so basically what HTML and JavaScript are the basic building blocks of any web page. So whatever we'll be writing in Vue.js, at the end, some compiler will compile it into HTML and CSS in JavaScript. Now, to get started, I'll show you the installation process of Vue.js, and then we'll actually use an online editor so that we don't waste time in installation since we have a lot to cover. But anyways, I'll show like how you can install it on your PC. So is my screen visible, the browser? I'm on new
Yeah,
tab.
where it is. It is visible.
Okay. So the first thing you want to do is download Node. Now, Node is basically
Yeah.
a package that lets you like build your own servers, get other packages, and down like basically all of the JavaScript things you'll be doing through Node. So you can download this version, which is the latest stable version, and then you will have to run these two commands. So I made a cheat sheet kind of thing for myself. So you have to download Node, and then you have to run these two commands. And this will create a brand new project for you. So if you can, you can run this command if you already have Node installed and all those things. But for the purpose of this workshop, we'll be using a online platform called Code Sandbox, and I'll be sharing the link with you, the project that I'm working on. So if you open this project, the link that I just sent, you will get to see the current project that I'm working on, and you'll get all the changes that we do in this workshop. I'll send you the links to download all the things and the commands in the text box only. So you have to download the latest version of Node from here. You'll have to install it. It's a standard installation like next, 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 start, next, 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 finish. And then you'll have to run these two commands. I'll send it to them. Then you'll have to run these two commands. So
Uh,
this, yeah,
yeah, Adi, for now you can just use the online platform, but at
yeah,
the end we'll just show
yeah.
you how to install if you want
Yes,
to
we
start.
don't have to do this right now. Since it will take some time, we don't want to waste that time here. We'll do it in the end if we have time. We'll get installation done for everyone. For now, if you've opened this link, you're good to go for the workshop. Okay. Everybody done with the opening the link? Should I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll be seeing like a project which has three main folders and files right now. One is public, one is src, and when one is a file called package.json. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So basically the package.json and public folders, you don't have to worry about. That is being taken care by the Vue CLI and the compiler. All the code that you'll write is in the src folder. So I'll go through the basic structure of the whole project. It's okay if you don't understand everything. I'll be going through each of the steps like one by one later in the workshop, but I'll just give an overview gist of everything. So the main app that we build starts with main.js, pretty self-explanatory. And this syntax is pretty much standard, so you don't have to write it. It comes along with the template, and it's pretty standard across all the apps. So what we're doing here is, first of all, we're importing Vue. Vue is like a package that we install through npm. So we import Vue, and we import a file called app.vue. I'll go through that file in a minute. So we import this file, and we tell the Vue compiler that this is the file that we have to start the app from. So basically, don't worry about this line. This is to make the production false so that we can see all the console errors and all the debugging things. Basically, we create a new Vue instance, and with this syntax, we give it the app variable to render. And this is also standard. We mount, this is a keyword, $mount. We mount the whole app in a div with the ID of app. So if you look in your public folder in the index.html, you will find a div called a div with the ID of app, and it says build files will be auto injected here. So the compiler, what the compiler will do is, it will take all the things from app.vue, it will copy them over, and it will render them inside this div. And this single page will be sent to the browser. So that's why it's called a single page application, because the only page that we're sending is index.html. Any issues till now? Anything not understood with this file?
No, Veer.
Okay. If anybody has any issues during the entire workshop, just speak up like right away. I'll just try to clear it then and there only. Then we have the main app.vue that we're actually importing and putting into this index.html folder.
Hello,
Index.html.
excuse me, Veer.
Yeah,
Am I audible?
yeah. Hi, you're audible.
Okay, a Vue is basically created by which group actually? React is created by Facebook. So Vue is basically created.
I'm not sure. I'll have to Google it. Uh,
Vue is not created by any group. It was actually a project made by some college guy, because he wanted something that he would use for himself,
is that okay?
and
I
that
didn't know that.
actually opened up and became open source, and it grew. It's
Okay,
made
so
by a guy
Vue,
called Levi.
Yeah, I
Vue is
know it's
basically
not proprietary of any company, but like that college, okay, that college guy seems to be very good. Uh, okay, any other questions?
I had a question.
Hmm.
So in main dot, can you open the main.js?
Okay.
So as I told you, I just know few basics of JavaScript. That's all.
Hmm.
Now, so like, what is the arrow function doing? And like, is that new view? Is it like an object or what is it?
Okay, so this is the new syntax for declaring functions in JavaScript. We can use a normal function here also. So how it works is, I'll just write two functions.
Yeah.
So normal functions, this is not Vue.js, so it will give some errors. Don't worry about that. So a normal function will be something like this,
Yeah. So
right?
basically, this is a function expression which you are telling, right? So
Yeah,
H.
yeah. So basically, if you want to write an arrow function,
Hmm.
it will be something like, okay, yeah, something like this, and this will be X, sorry. So this is an anonymous arrow function. So
Okay.
the parameters, you can put it in a bracket, and whatever function you want to, like, you want to log something or you want to alert. So this is like a syntax, a replacement syntax for this function keyword.
But H doesn't have that what you call brackets, right? So it's not necessary, is it, to have brackets like after H?
No, no, not really. If there's a single argument, you don't need to put brackets, because
And
but
you
for
also don't need return.
you, this, yeah. So if there's a single, so here, okay, if there's a single statement and a single parameter, so you don't need any brackets here. That's why they chose the syntax. But if there were multiple parameters or multiple statements, you'll have to put those brackets in.
Cool, got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Okay, while it transpires, I'll quickly go over the app.view. Everybody clear with main.js?
Yeah.
Cool.
What's transpiling?
Transpiling is equivalent of like building the project basically. So I told you now that the entire project, like whatever file and whatever you create, in the end it goes to index.html, and the HTML is basically rendered out here. So the page that you actually see is just this page, but all the processes, the getting all the pictures, getting all the variables, and running all the functions, that's called transpiling, and at the end the code is setting up.
Okay.
So basically the main.js file transpiles this Vue file, transpiles, you can say converts this Vue file into this index.html file and some JavaScript, obviously. Now, what do we have here in the Vue file? This, okay, each Vue file has three main components, which will be wrapped inside three, you can call them HTML tags. So a normal HTML page, if anybody knows about that, is head, then body, then script, you can add JavaScript inside the HTML, and then style. Now script and styles say the kind of the same here. We have two tags. So we basically put all our JavaScript inside the script tag, and we put all our styles inside the style tag. The HTML we have to put inside a template tag. So this is a keyword. We can't change the name of this. So in every Vue page, we'll have to have a template tag, and we'll have to put all the HTML inside that. Is that clear?
Yeah.
All right. So I will remove this component for now because I haven't explained components yet. I'll just say hello. Yeah, just hello, it's okay. So as you can see, this page is being rendered here. Now, what should I change? I'll get rid of this, and I'll explain what all goes inside this script tag. So the first thing we have is name. So name is basically a unique identifier for the page. We are not using it anywhere, but Vue will show some errors if you don't define it, or define it as a, not errors, warnings, if you define it as a duplicate of some other page. Then we have a thing called data, which is basically a function where we return all the variables that we want to use. So for example, in this page, I want to use a variable called name. So I'll define it inside here. I'll name it, I'll give the value Veer. And then I can use this variable inside my page. Is that clear? The syntax for data is, it's basically a function that returns an object.
Yeah.
Everybody are
Thank you.
familiar with objects, right? Like how keys and values work, or should I explain that?
We might also have some beginners here, so if you just give
Yeah.
small examples of everything, that will be easier for everyone.
Okay. I'll just write up an object here. So basically, okay, people know what a variable is. So we have name is equal to, for example, Veer. So if you have a group of variables, like if you put section and we name it C, if we have a group of variables that we wanna like save inside a single entity, so these two are kind of related, right? So that's when we can make an object. So we can make an object, we can call it student, a very standard example, and it will have two key value pairs. So what do I mean by key value pairs? So each entity inside an object will have a key, that is the name, and will have a value. So the value can be anything. It can be a number, it can be a string, it can be an array, or it can be another object. So if I have, for example, address, so it can be another object that has all the like another key set of keys inside of it. So that's how objects work in JavaScript. Anybody, any issues with that?
Can you have any number of nested objects?
Yeah, you can have any unlimited number of nested objects, but it's generally not a good practice because then you'll have to go inside each of the objects and you'll have to compute a lot of data. But yeah, technically you can have as many as you like. Okay, I'll continue. So basically this data function returns an object of all the variables that we'll be using in this app. So the question comes, how do I actually use this variable? Now, there are two places that you might want to use it. One is inside other functions and other declarations in the JavaScript that I'll go through in a minute. The second is inside the actual HTML template. So right now it just says hello. What if I wanted to say hello something like the name of the person? So the syntax for that is double curly braces open, double curly braces close, and then the name of the variable. I'll just let it save. Yeah, just a minute. Compiling. Yeah, I think I'll have to reload and see. Okay, so it says hello Veer now. Everybody clear with how we're supposed to use variables in HTML?
Yes.
Yeah. What should I go through next? So we have variables in HTML. Now, what if we want to use the same variable somewhere in a function or something? So before doing that, we'll have to see how we define functions in Vue.js. So it's pretty simple. We just make another object called methods, and we'll have all our functions here. So I'll just name it hello. And we can do things like everybody knows console.log. It just logs something in the developer's console. So this is a basic function that just logs something in this console. It will just log hello whenever we call it. Is this clear how we define functions?
Also, guys, we kind of suggest that you code along with us. But if you prefer to listen and understand first before coding, we will be sharing the code with you later.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
don't worry about that.
So
Okay.
at any point of time, if you want the latest code, the link I sent you, you can just reload that link and you will get the code that I'm writing here. And at the end, we'll put everything in a GitHub page and we'll send it to you. So if you want to, you can code along with us. it's basically your choice. If you want to just listen and like pay attention to this, you can. So now we get to how we call this function. So we can do two things. One is we can put a button somewhere and we can call a function from that. And the other thing is we can put this function inside some other method in the JavaScript page, JavaScript code. I'll do the first thing first. So for example, we have a button and it just says set name for now. So we have a button. The way we call functions from the HTML is using @click event handler. Basically, I think it's called event handler. So basically, we do @click and then the function name, and this, when we click it, it will run the function. So if I clear this up, so it says hello. Now I told you a function is where you can use all these variables that you defined. So what if when we run the function, we set this to blank initially, and when we run the function, we make it Veer. So the way we do it is we do this dot and then the variable name, and we can set it to whatever we like. So I'll explain what this is, but let's just see it work for now. So when I reload, it just says hello. There's no name, but when I click on set name, it actually sets the variable to Veer. So this variable is kind of the like an object of the entire Vue page. So this whole file is stored in a single object, a single variable called this. So we can do a lot of stuff with this, but right now let's just keep it to accessing different variables that we define in the return statement. Any issues with this?
Yeah, if you have any doubts, just feel free to stop us at any time and then ask. No worries, okay?
Okay, so I'll continue. Okay, we are not done with the basics, but we have a foundation now. So what I would like to do, instead of just going through one feature at a time, is we have time, right? We still have 2 hours. So we'll build something. We'll build something with the VueJS framework, and we'll see what goes where and how we use different things. So what I thought was a simple quiz website, like there's just multiple choice questions. You click next, submit, and it just gives you the score. Is that okay with everyone, or does anybody have a different idea? We can go with anything. I haven't really prepared anything, so we can do anything we want. So does a quiz website sound good, or any other ideas you want to pitch in?
We'll do the quiz website.
Okay. Other people good with that?
Yes, that will be good.
Okay, so we'll just go through that. So okay, let's start. So first thing, while attempting a quiz, is you will have to make the user login. But since we don't have a database right now, we'll just collect their name right for now. Okay. So we'll just say enter name. So if there's anything new that we'll be using, I'll be talking in detail about it. Other than that, I'll just be writing the code. So we have our input field. Everybody knows about this. So it just lets you input stuff. And we have to connect this input field with this variable. So the way we do it is a V model. So what a V model does is it will take whatever you enter in this in this input field, and it will assign the name variable to it. So we can actually get rid of this function. And so the name is empty for now. If I start entering something, it will be filled. But how do we see it? So we can just show out the name right in front, like right below the actual input field. So I'll just say your name is name. So I'll just put a BR tag here. Okay. So if I enter Veer now, or I enter anything else, it will actually change the variable, and it will render that variable back into the HTML. So now the other thing is this. Right now, this page kind of looks bad, right? Your name is dash is showing up even though we haven't filled anything. So it just says your name is blank. What if we wanted to show this your name is text only when we enter some name here? So this comes under conditions and if statements basically. So a programming logic would be if this name dot length, since it's a string, if name dot length is greater than 0, then we have to show this. But how do we write it in HTML? So for that, we use a property called vif. So if I wrap this around a paragraph tag, and we add a vif, v dash if, and we say name dot length is not equal to 0. So it just checks this condition. If it's true, then it renders out the HTML inside it. If it's false, it just skips the whole thing. So by default, there's no your name is, but if I enter something, it just appears. Everybody clear with VF? Any issues?
No.
Now, what else do we need? We need a submit or a start button, right? So that they can proceed to the next page after entering the name. So I'll just put a button here. I am not writing any CSS, so it's gonna look very pale and dry, but it's okay. We can work on the CSS later. So I'll just put submit. And can anybody tell me how do I link this with the function?
By using on submit event handler. Yeah.
At click.
Add.
So I'll just make another method called submit name. It will be empty for now. And at click, we will submit the name. Okay. Now, what do we have to do when someone submits the name? We have to do two things. First, we have to store their name somewhere. Second, we have to move them to another page that will have the questions that we have of the quiz. So for the first thing, since we don't have a database, we'll be using local storage. So basically your browser has a locally stored variables. So if you press Ctrl+Shift+I and you go to application, so basically it has a local storage which stores string variables inside of it. Everything is stored as string. So that's what we'll be using. But in a real case scenario, you would be like saving the name of the participant in a database, either SQL or non-SQL. That's up to you. So the way we do it is local storage dot set item, and we will set the name as this dot name. Is this clear? This much? I'll get rid of this. Any issues with this? So basically what we're doing is we're defining a property called name, variable called name. We are binding that variable with the input field. So whatever we enter will be put inside this variable. And then when we click on this button, we will run a function to store it in a local storage. Cool. Any issues? On submit as in?
So I guess he like, hello.
Yeah. Speak. Yeah. So.
So I guess instead of add click, he told like on submit. So I wanted to know the difference between both.
Did I say on submit earlier? If I said that, I'm really sorry. It's at click. So on submit, I think works with forms, like a form element and all. But for normal click events, we just use as at click. I'm really sorry if I said submit earlier. So I'll just demonstrate this. So I'll just enter my name. I'll hit submit. And then if I open up the local storage, that variable should be there. Just a minute. Yeah. So the name is equal to Veer. So later in the app, we can get this name and we can show it maybe your Veer, your score is this. Now, the other thing that we have to do is we have to route the user to another page that will have the actual quiz. So this word route, what does it mean? So basically, it means that when they click submit, they go to some other page. But how do we define this route? So in any website, if you see, if I click on this, if I click on like, I can't go out of this website, but if I click on anything, the URL changes, right? The URL that I have on the top. Now, to deal with the URL changes, Vue has a thing called Vue-router. So we'll be installing it here and I'll be showing you the syntax of that. Before that, any issues with whatever we have right now? Is it all clear?
Yes, Veer.
All right. So when you install Vue with that Node.js and all the CLI commands that I sent in the beginning, you'll get the router pre-installed. But since it's an online platform, we'll have to add a dependency. It's called Vue-router. And we just have to click it it will just install by itself. So in the dependencies tab, you can see Vue-router now. Now, how do we use it? I kind of prepared a cheat sheet for that too. I will just paste it for now and I'll explain it one by one. So I'll just create a new file. I'll make it router.js and I'll paste this template. So this is also very standard template. You don't have to make many changes here. The only thing you have to define are the routes that you'll be using for your page. So before that, we'll just create another folder and we call it views. We just call it views. So you can call it anything you like, but it's standard that you call like the folder that you put your pages and views and the components you put in the components folder. So I'll create a new file called home.view. And for now, I'll just copy whatever we had in app and I'll just paste it there. Okay. So how does this router work? So the first thing you have to do is the same boilerplate, import Vue, import the router, and then make the Vue variable use the router. And then we define this variable called routes. Sorry. So we define a variable called routes and we pass it inside a new router instance. So don't worry about the syntax if it looks a bit not conventional. It's because like it's pre-written, we don't have to write it again and again. The only thing we have to worry about is these routes. So I'll just create one for now. So in each route, we define a path and we define a component that we have to show when the user is on that URL. So when the user is on slash, that is like no URL after the main link, we show them the home component. Now to use this home, we'll have to import it. So we say import home from views slash home.view. Okay, any issues with this? How we set up the routing and what it's used for, more importantly?
I don't think so, Veer.
Okay, so we told Vue that these are our routes, but where does Vue render those routes? Like we have to define a HTML tag where uh, VueJS will basically take this component and it will put it inside that. So for that, we have something called a router link. No, sorry. I think it's called router view. Router view, yeah. Okay, let me just confirm if the spelling of this is correct or not. Since we don't write these things very often, it's kind of very, what do you call it, foggy on the memory. Yeah, it's called a router view. Okay. So first step, we define the router.js. Second step, we add the router view HTML inside our app.view. And the third step is we'll actually have to tell our main.js to actually use this file for the routing. So the way we do it is first we'll have to import that file. So we'll say router from dot slash router.js. Then we'll say view dot use. Okay, no, we can just pass it inside this component. So we can just pass it inside here. Ah. Yeah, I'll just reload. It's a method, master undefined. Okay, I messed up the import, sorry. Just a minute. Yes. Okay, no, it's correct. Okay. Really sorry for this. Till then, if you have any questions, I'll work on this and answer your questions simultaneously.
No one has any doubts?
So the way you solve errors is basically Google them. We've been doing that like every time you code. Okay. So the issue with this is that when you pass it to Vue, it has to be called router with a small r. I don't know why they built it that way, but this is how it is. So this has to be router with a small r. We can't have capital R here. So as you can see, in the app.vue, we don't have our code anymore, the code that we wrote for entering the name and submit. We have it in this file inside the views folder, and we are loading it through a route. So whenever we go to this path, we will load this component. So I'll just define another route. I'll call it slash questions. And I will make a new file inside the views folder, and I'll call it questions.vue. And I'll just say this will have the questions. Okay, so now if I go to slash questions, I will get this page. Everybody clear with this? Okay, so now what did we have to do? When they clicked on this submit button, we had to store that name, that we did, and we had to move them to this questions page. So how do we do that? The way we do it is, again, we use this object, and it has a property called $router. So $router is the Vue router that we imported, and it has a function called .push. And you can basically push a URL change inside of that. So I'll just say questions. And now whenever I click on submit, it will save the name and it will reroute me to the questions page. So if I say Veer1 and hit submit, it rerouted me to this questions page. Clear? Is this syntax clear? $router is fixed. You can't change this variable. And even this function name is fixed. Any issues with this? I need a yes or no, guys. Yes, as in any issues, or okay, I get it.
I think yes, as in no issues.
Yeah,
It's fine.
okay. So cool. Now we have our questions page. and we will have to firstly show the name of the user because I want to show how to get stuff from local storage. That's the only reason. So basically, when this page loads, we have to do something, right? Now, with the things that we have learned till now, we can only do some code, run some code when we click on something, or we can define variables. How do we run a function when a page loads or a page is destroyed or when it's created? So that's where lifecycle hooks come into picture. So what do I mean by lifecycle hooks? So each page has a set of steps that it goes through. And at each of these steps, we have a function that is predefined, and we can run some of our code inside that function. So the cycle goes as each component is first created, then it's mounted on the web page, and whenever we change any data, or as we saw in this example, we changed the name, it is updated, and then when we read out to some other page, it is destroyed. So we have these four major lifecycle hooks. So in the questions.view, if we define a property called before create, this name is fixed by Vue, we can't change it. So if we say before create and we write some code here, it will run when the page is created. Now, what do we want to do when the page is created? We want to get some data from, okay, this should not be there. Yeah. So we have to get some data before we load the page. So the way we do it is local storage dot get item. We use set item there. Here we use get item, which is the same name that we used in this. So we did local storage dot set item name. Similarly, we'll do local storage dot get item name, and we can store this in a variable. So the same name variable we'll use here, and we'll store whatever is present in the local storage, we'll store it here. So I'll just say hello name, and if I reload, okay, just a minute. My variable name's correct. Name is start name. Let me try one thing. Okay. Okay, I'll explain why that didn't work. So we have these two. I told you there are two things that the page goes through. One is being created, then it's being mounted. When the page is being created, we don't have these variables and the local, okay, we have the local storage data, but we don't have these variables in hand because these variables haven't been created yet. But after creation, when it is mounted, that's when we have access to this dot name, so we can set it. That's why when I put this dot name is equal to something and before create, it didn't work. Any issues with that? Any issues with lifecycle hooks or anything like that? Okay, I'll continue. So we have the name. There will be questions here. Now let's define our questions. So I'll make a variable called questions, and it will be an array, and I already have a pre-typed question JSON. We can just use that. So these are our questions. Now each question has a question number, has some text that will display, has a type, whether it is a MCQ or a input based question or whatever we want. And if it's a MCQ, it will have a bunch of options. If it's a normal input, we don't have to do anything. So this is the JSON that we have. Now, how do we show HTML templates based on this JSON? Now, we know that we can basically render out this variable as just curly braces, but this isn't very helpful, right? What we have to do is we have to show the text, and we have to show 4 radio buttons or something for the options and everything. Now, I could do it like this. So if I go div, I make a div, and I say questions 0.text. I'll get rid of this. And similarly, I make other questions in the same page. But I will be copying a lot of code. And I don't know how many questions there are. There can be 100 questions. I'll have to do it like 0, then 1, then 2, and then 3. This is where a v-for, like basically a for loop in HTML, comes into picture. So in any HTML element component, if we define v for is equal to, and we just say question in questions, and we have to give it a vbind key, which is like a unique identifier. So I'll just give question dot queue number. And we can show all of the objects in a kind of a looped manner, where it will just iterate over each object, and it will show the text inside of it. Is v for clear? Any doubts in that?
Yeah, it's clear, Veer.
Excuse me, I didn't get that v bind thing. Like, what is
Okay.
unique key for a specific
Okay.
question?
Okay. So basically, whenever we do a for loop in HTML, we have to give each HTML each div tag. So this will basically create 3 div tags, right? One for question 1, one for 2, one for 3.
Okay.
Now each of these should have a property called vbind key, which is a unique identifier of that div. So we can use something that we define inside the question. So we have the question numbers. So we can just give it a key called question.qno. QNO is the unique identifier of that object.
Okay, thank you. Like, it's just a specific key for every question, right? Like,
Yeah.
whenever.
Yeah. If you don't have any key, what you can also do is use the index. So if you do this, and you do something like this, it will also work. So for example, I don't have a question number. I can just use the index of the object inside the array. All right.
Okay. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Now, okay, the first question, which is the MCQ, has a few options that we'll have to show as radio buttons. The second will have an input field that we'll have to give them a submit button and an input field. And the third one will have, the third one will have the options. So how do we, okay, first let's make those elements, and then we'll define how these things will work. So for the input box, we just have an input tag, and we'll model it with we'll say question dot answer. Okay, there's a missing quote. Okay. But now each of these have an input tag. We don't want that. We want only this one to have an input. Input tag. So we'll have to check the type of the question, and if the type is equal to input, we'll have to show the input box. Other than that, we'll not show the input box. So the way we do it is we if, and we say question dot type is equal to input. So if the question dot type is input, that's when we show the input box. Otherwise, we don't. Is this clear? Combination of v-for and vf. Okay. Now, if it's a MCQ, we'll have to put radio buttons, right? First of all, let me put some space in between these things, these questions. Okay. So if it's a MCQ type question, we'll have to put radio buttons. So we'll make another div. We say if question dot type is equal to MCQ, then we'll put some radio button code here. Now, how do I bind? Okay, I forgot to do this. I also have to bind this radio buttons to a variable inside the question, right? Now, just a minute. So I have this code. It's basically two labels and two radio buttons. But this is standard HTML. There's no view involved in this. But what we have to do is we have to again loop through the options. We have 4 options with us. We have to loop through the options and we have to make 4 input boxes. Sorry, 4 radio buttons. If we had, for example, 10 options, it would automatically loop through 10 radio buttons. So inside this VF, we again have to do a v-for, and we will say option in question dot options. Okay. So now for each MCQ, it shows you 4 options, but the name and the value of each thing is still the same. So the value we are, by default, it was defined as 1 and 2 and 3, but we want to use these variables. Now, if I just put option inside this value parameter, it will just say option here. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so if I put option here, it will show the options that we have. So answer 1, 2, 3, 4, bad, okayish, very bad, great. Now, we also have to change the value that is being, you can call it, captured by each of these radio buttons. So the way we do it is we say value is equal to and then the option, and before the value we put this. So what this does is whenever it will take the variable, it will take the value of this variable and it will put it into the value property. If we just do this, the value will be equal to the string option. But if we do this, the value will be equal to answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4. I think that's a bit confusing. If anybody has a question in that, you can ask. Everybody clear with this?
Yeah, Vijay, you can go on.
Okay, now one more thing we'll have to do is bind this in radio button to the actual answer of the question. So again, we can do the same question.ans. So Yeah. I think we're ready with the MCQ. Okay. At the end, we'll just add a submit button since we'll store it in local storage. We'll call the function submit answers. I'll do one more thing. Instead of just storing the answers inside this object only, I'll just make another object called answers, and I'll just store all the answers there so that I can log it very easily right here. So how do I do that? So basically we have to do answers dot, and then we have to put a unique, the question number that we have. So what this will do is this will take the answers object, which is an empty object for now, and it will make properties like 0, 1, 2, 3, and it will store the corresponding answers along with those properties. So if I run this, I take something, I enter something, and this, I should get my answers inside the console. So this is spelling okay. Okay, something is wrong with this. Just a minute. Any issues till now? Okay, Blaze, do you have any idea where this could be happening? It's modeling the same answers to the all the questions, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking at the code 1 second.
This also. Okay, I guess we can do this. So basically, we bind the answer to the same questions object, and we just log it here. So later we can check these answers that we have put by the real answers that are there in maybe a database or saved locally. So what we can do is we can put the real answers here. So for example, question number 0 can have answer as -1. Question number 2 can have something. Okay, sorry, 1. And 2 can have okay. So these are our answers, and these are the questions which are like, these are the questions object to which we'll bind the answers given by the user. So at the end, we just have to check if these answers match but with the answers that the user gives us. So now everybody knows JavaScript loops here, how JavaScript loops work, like for each and all those. Does anybody have an idea? Yeah, I'll just go through them. So in JavaScript, what you can do is we can do this dot questions dot for each, and then this element variable will hold the value of each element inside the array. So you can say if you can say element dot answer that the user put is equal to, if element dot answer is equal to the answer in the answers array with that question. Okay, so we at the end we have to calculate the score of the user, right? So we define the score as 0 initially inside this data return statement, and then we loop through the questions, we get the answers that the user has inputted, and we check if the answer match the one that we put inside this array, inside this object, sorry. If it does, we'll increment the score. If it doesn't, we'll just leave the score as it is. And at the end, I'll just show sorry. Okay, so this is what we have. There are 3 questions. Your score is 0. But if I select these questions, I say something and okay, I get some errors, obviously. For each of undefined. I think I forgot a S. This dot questions. Again, this should give me a score of 1. Since you need a space here for answer 1. Okay, so this is basically how we use VueJS to create loops and if statements and all of those fancy stuff. I think you all might be overloaded by now. Should I continue or should we call it a day? Like, have you understood this much at least? Like, it's a basic prerequisite for starting with Vue. How's it going till now? Any inputs?
We check chat.
Oh, okay.
So if you guys have any doubts up until now, like whatever we have thought, so just ask us and we'll help you. And even after the session, if you have any more doubts, be it Vue or Angular or anything front end thing, you feel free to ask us and or mainly ask Veer.
Yeah. You can always contact me regarding anything. So, any issues in this? I think we covered most of.
Has a question.
Okay. Can we
He's
build
asking, can we build multiple page like e-commerce websites using VueJS?
Yeah. So VueJS is mainly used to build those kinds of websites. So normally, if it's a product page or, for example, the NISB website, you won't use VueJS because there's not a lot of user interaction. Like they're not clicking different buttons to add to cart and everything. But if it's an app, that's where frameworks like Vue.js can be used. So yes, you can create a e-commerce website using Vue.js very easily. Is this a static or dynamic? I would say it's dynamic. Static more means like the HTML code is fixed of the entire page, but when you're using different data from the database and you're using different variables and loops, it comes under dynamic. Any other questions?
Hey.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. So you said that we can store the values in MySQL or any database. So can we do the same as, can we store it in a file and can we read the contents of a file?
Okay. So in this environment, I don't think you can, because for that I'll have to explain front end and back end a bit. So basically, whatever code is running, it's running on the front end. So it's actually running on the user's browser. So all the files are stored there and everything is stored there. With frameworks like Node.js or Flask, if you've heard, it's a Python library. The code that runs there is stored in the backend. That means the backend is the server where the website is hosted. Now, with the backend, with the backend code, you can use the files and you can use their file system to store data, but you can't store data in the user's browser files. So in this framework, unfortunately, you can't store data in the files. You'll have to connect it to a database or maybe send the data to a backend service, and there you can save it as a file or something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a question, React or Vue? So it mainly depends on your personal preference. Vue is a bit easier to start with. React I haven't dove much into, but I've heard it has great community support and it is quite big than what Vue is. But they basically do the same thing, just different methodologies. So Vue is more component based, I think. React is more dynamic and more functional based. So you can start with anything. The thing with these frameworks are, if you start with one and you jump to other, it's very easy to transition. Like I learned Angular and then I learned Vue. It was kind of similar with just different syntaxes for calling functions and adding click events and everything. So yeah, you can go with anything. React is just a bit easier to start with. That's why we picked it for this workshop. Anything else? Okay. Do you guys want to build something else, or should we continue with this uh, quiz and everything? Because most of the basic concepts like the calling functions, declaring variables, and all of that has been covered. The only thing left is like practice and getting to know the systems a bit better. One thing we can do is we can make this a bit prettier if you like. So I can go over a Vue.js template library. It's like a styling library for Vue.js called Vuefy, and we can build custom elements there and we can play along with that. Okay, but before that, I would like to explain components for a minute. So we have this button, right? Now we're using it 2 times in our pages since we have only 2 pages. But generally in a big application, you would use a similar kind of button multiple times. So what do we do when it's the same code and we just use it like 10, 20 times? You don't want to write it again and again. That's where components come into picture. So what we can do is we can just create a new component. We can call it button. We can call the file button.vue. And it has the same structure as all the Vue files, all the views that we have. We'll just get rid of whatever is not needed. I'll get rid of this. We don't need any data. The name will be button. And we will just have a button inside the HTML. So this is a bit redundant because there's only one HTML tag and we can just put it anywhere we want. But imagine if we have a group of like 10, 20 HTML tags and we are using it in multiple places. That's where components come into picture. So what I can do is in the questions.vue, I can just import this component. Excuse me. So I say import button from at components slash button.vue. Step 1, import the component. Step 2 is we have to declare a components object inside the view, and we just pass the component there. Okay, sorry. Okay, and the third point is we actually use the component. Just a minute, there's some error, I guess. I think it's just a reload thing. I'll just reload once. Blaze, can you spot any errors? I think this should work. Components.
Maybe the addressing, try given direct addressing instead of add slash. Do a dot dot slash components, whatever.
Just a minute.
That could work.
Okay, I think this is kebab case. Oh, okay, it's okay. Shit, I forgot to scroll. It's coming a bit below. That should also work. In that case, I can just use button. Yep. Okay. So we have a component. Everybody clear with that? Sorry for the spelling mistake or scrolling mistake, whatever it was. So we have a component. It says submit and it's a simple button. But what if at different pages we want to show different text inside the button? So what we have to do is we have to pass some data from the parent questions.view to the component that is the button. So basically, I have to pass a string, for example, submit answers from this questions.view file into this button.view file. So the way I do it is I define it as a property. So I just say text is equal to submit answers. And in the component, I can define a prop. So I can just do a props and I can say text, which is type of string. And instead of submit, I can use text. Did I say text here? Just a minute. Okay, I'll get back to this. I'm not sure why it's not working. Let's continue with the new thing, with the next one. Okay, now we have the button, but the actual function that we want to call the submit answer some function is inside the hello.
Shouldn't that the text was typed there? Yeah, the line third, it's typed. I think that's the only problem.
Next one. Oh shit, yeah, okay. Yeah, that was the issue. A lot of spelling mistakes and everything. Okay, so this work, basically you send some text into the component and you receive it as a prop inside the component. So a prop will have the name and it will have a type of the property that it is. So if it's a number, it will be a number, string, array, object. You can pass anything. Now we have this click button and we'll just call it submit for now. Now in a component, we don't define functions specific to a page, right? So this component can be used anywhere in any page. So we don't want to just bind its function to say submit answers. It can also be used to submit a name or a password or something. So what we have to do is when they click on the button, we have to push a event up to the parent. So in Vue.js, we pass data down to a component and we push events up to a parent. So the way that we do it is when they click on submit, we do this dot dollar emit and we name a function. We'll just call it submit for now. And we have to catch it inside this HTML tag. So we say @submit is equal to and whatever function we want to bind it to. So we have submit answers. Is this clear how this .emit works?
Yeah, it's clear.
All right, so it should be working like always. Okay, I'll do okay. Reload first. So it just uses the same button and does the same thing. But since we have this component now, we can use the same button in a separate place and we don't have to write our code again. So when this submits, we say submit name and the text is submit name. So in our main page, the same component can be used. Just a minute. Is it the same thing again? Text one. Oh, I haven't registered this component. So there are other steps to adding a component, right? We have to import it and we have to add it to our components array object. So I'll just copy this. So we import the button, we add it to our components page, and if we reload, this should be working. Yeah. So the same component can be used in multiple places and it can run multiple functions. Any issues with how components and child child and parent relationships work in Vue.js?
If you have multiple events, so to emit, can they just like continue, like append it to the button?
Yeah. You can just add, for example, anything, and you can just add multiple events right like this only. And similarly, multiple properties also. So, for example, I want to send the answers, so I can just send the answers. But here's the catch: when you are sending a string, you just have to do it like this. So text1 is equal to whatever string this is. But here I want to send the variable, the data inside the variable answers. If I do this, it will just send the string answers to the component.
So we bind that thing, right?
So the way we send a variable is we just add a colon here. So we just do colon and whatever variable name we want, and then this will be treated as a variable. So if we don't have the colon, it will be treated as a string. If we have the colon, it will be treated as a variable name. And we can add n number of events to the same component, and we can emit different events like different events, like just change this name and it will emit different events. Now, sometimes you want to pass some data from the child to the parent. So right now, how we learned it is we pass some data from parent to child, and the child emits some event that is passed to the parent. But with that event, we can also pass some data. So if we have, this is not an apt example, but I'll just show it right here. So if we have a variable called, I'll just make a variable here. If we have a variable, we can just pass that variable along with this event. And when we define this function, we can just put the placeholder. So name can be here. So basically what you're doing is you're passing this variable through the event to the parent, and there you are catching the same variable inside a function that you attach to this event handler. So this name and this name should be the same. Where it go? This name and this name should be the same, but this can be anything. This is just a variable name. This thing is a bit confusing. So any questions on this or anything that you didn't understand?
No, it's clear. It's clear.
So we don't have much left. I think we can put it on like any questions that you want to ask. And if you're wondering how some things on some random website, maybe an e-commerce website or Facebook or Instagram, how some things can be done through Vue.js, like a like button or adding comments, you can just ask and I'll explain how you would like basically approach that feature or the problem. Okay, if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat or speak. If everybody is okay, like everybody is, I think you are very saturated by now with all the new things. So we can end this here. We can, and any questions that you have or anything else, you can just send it either on any WhatsApp group that NISB has, or you can DM me personally. I'll just help you with whatever you're working on. All right, then I guess it's enough for today. Like we have covered a lot of things. I'll be sharing the code with everyone along with your participation email, participation certificates, and you can go through the same link and you can change whatever you want. You can fork the same uh, project through this button and just play around with it. Just start with Vue. It's pretty.
And Veer, could you explain local storage once again? Like you put it in a function, I think, a method, specific method to
Local
initialize
storage.
it.
Okay. So I used it to store the name of the person. So basically, in home.view, I think this thing, right? We're talking about this.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So there is a cache kind of storage in the browser where you can store things. Excuse me, there's a bit of disturbance from your mic. Okay, sorry. So there's a cache kind of thing that every browser has. It's called the local storage, and you can set string variables and you can get some data, user data from there. So since we didn't have a database, what I did was I just used the local storage and I stored the name so that I could access it in a separate file later on. But what you would do is basically when they submit their name, you want to basically make them log in instead of just submitting the name in a real world application. And you would use some authentication to save their data in a database with their name or email or password or whatever, and then from that database you can fetch it again in a separate file. But since we didn't have a database, I just used Jugaad, if you want to call it that.
Or you also initialize. I mean, initialize that local storage. I think before. I saw.
No. This variable is, you can use it in plain JavaScript. So this is not a Vue.js thing. If it would be a Vue.js thing, then we'll have to import it and all. But this is a JavaScript function. So you can use it in any browser, any application basically. It's not Vue.js specific. So you don't have to import local storage to use it anywhere. You just do set item, get item, and I think that's the most used two functions of local storage.
And this the router that push, that is to route the user to the particular page.
Yes. So this router.push adds this question route to the history. So for example, if I submit the name and I submit, if I go back, I'll go back to the previous page.
Oh, okay.
So it just redirects the user to a separate page where you have a separate file that is being loaded.
Okay, and I also heard about router guards or something. I think it was
okay. Yeah. So basically, right now these routes are very open, right? So anybody can access questions or anybody can access this. But with a router guard, what you would do is you would authenticate the user using some sort of a functionality, like for example, Firebase, or you can even do it in SQL. You would authenticate the user, and based on whether he is logged in or not, you would restrict his access to some kind of uses. But since we don't have an authentication module, I can't really show it in practice right now. But I can show you the syntax. So just a minute. Router. Yeah, we're exporting it from router.js to main.js. Before you export it, you add this function. So basically, router is the same name as this, and you call a function called before each. So what this does is, before routing it to a separate page, it will just check whatever you have, the conditions that you have here. So here I can write my authentication code, authenticate user, and if it's authenticated, then I can do like continue. If it's not authenticated, I can do a break and I can reroute him to some page like access denied or something like that. So that's how it works. Router guards.
Okay.
Okay. One more way to store user information or any other variable that you wanna store like globally in your app is Vuex. So basically, right now I stored it in local storage, right? I just said name and I just stored the name. What else I can do is I can set Vuex, set a Vuex variable in like I can set a Vuex variable called name and I can store the name there, and it will be I can use it across any page that I want. But the issue with that is that if I reload the page, that variable will be set back to null. Whereas with local storage, if I reload, it will still be there, that variable. So that's why I didn't go through local storage Vuex. But if you want, we can do it. Like we'll have to import and we'll have to do a few things. Let me see if Vuex is there or not. Actually, Vuex syntax is a bit trickier, so that's why I didn't want to cover it. I'll just go through the documentation myself once.
Someone has a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
No, in the chat, I mean, someone has asked this question.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay, I think my audio feed stopped or something.
Okay, do you want me to read out to you?
No, I can see it. Okay.
Okay.
The first question, if some part of the code is done in React or Angular, can it? No, the syntax of these three things are totally different. So if you wrote something in React or in Angular, you will have to rewrite it again, and you'll have to rewrite it according to the Vue guidelines. And for the second question, what's the difference between VueJS and using the text editor along with browser sync? Okay, text editor as in like text editor with browser sync is how you develop things, right? But Vue.js is kind of like how your application will work. So Vue.js also you write in a text editor only. So you use VS Code or you use any other text editor, but it's just the way that you write your applications. So yes, I use Visual Studio Code, but I've also used Sublime. It's good. I haven't used Notepad++, so I'm not sure about that. But Visual Studio Code has almost everything that we need. So it's lightweight and it's very portable. So that's why I use it. So for that question, like browser sync and a normal HTML page, what we did today, like we did it in an hour or something, I guess, if you keep the explaining time away and everything. That would, the same task would take longer and it will be more code if we try to do it with just a HTML page and some JavaScript and we attach define variables and do all those things. So basically to make your life easier, you kind of learn a new thing and it just gives you more time and it just makes your workflow more robust. That's why you use Vue and all those frameworks.
Veer, what's computed properties?
Okay, I'll go to computed. That's easy.
Is it useful?
Yeah, computed is useful. So sorry I couldn't go through Vuex. It's a bit like a bigger topic, so it'll take at least half an hour or something. I don't think anybody has the capacity for that after like 2 hours.
Hi, sir.
But I'll do complicated. It's pretty simple. So how do I give an example of that?
Maybe take out the view event loop and the diagram and show them.
No, I want to integrate it somewhere like in the app. So the syntax is pretty simple. We have a computed object which has a bunch of functions. So okay, I can just say capital name. I'll put this in the name developer. Home.view. Okay, so this is the syntax. This is a computed property, and the property name is capital name. So we can use this capital name anywhere that there's some error. Let me just, capital name is not defined. This is the syntax. Correct? Minus. Just a minute. This forgets to reload sometimes, like recompile. Okay. Okay. I got to know the problem. This is also like a good learning experience, I guess. So you can't have a before each, and you can't do like nothing before it, because then it will just not route it anywhere. So you have to do either two, like you have to do next. You can call this function, and then it will go to the next page. But since we're not doing anything, I'll just remove it for now. So it just wasn't routing it anywhere. So that was the issue. So how a computed property works is it takes some property that we define in the data, and it runs some computation on that, and it returns another property. So every time this name change, every time this property that this is derived from changes, it will rerun, and it will rerun the computed property. So if I do return name dot to uppercase, his dot name, sorry, and instead of name, I'll just say capital name. So what's happening in the background is I'm setting the name property with the V model. It's changing this property. Then this function is running because this is a computed property that is based on this name. And when this runs, it returns the uppercase version of the same name. So when you enter this, you get this. So this is how computed works. Was that clear? Should I give another example?
Yeah, it was clear.
All right.
Also, watch. What's watch?
Watch.
Like,
Okay. I think this is the syntax. I'm not really sure. I'll just put a watch on name. Just a minute. It's again a function. I'll just log something, okay? So how watch works is this is a syntax, same as computed. It's the only difference is this name should be defined inside the data, and for the computed, it should not be defined inside the data. So how watch works is whenever there is a change in this variable, it runs this function. So the difference between computed and watch is whenever there is a change in a variable used inside the function, it reevaluates the variable outside the function. You can see it that way. And in watch, whenever there's a change in the variable that is declared before the function, it just runs the function again. So if I change this, it just logs name changed. And here you can use the to and the from changes. So I can just say from to. I think this should work. So you can get the previous value and the value that it has been changed to.
wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for asking questions, bro. Like, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think that's it. So we'll be emailing you the feedback forms.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. So please do fill it out and let us know what we can change or what we can improve and what we did good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is it, I guess.
All right. I hope you guys learned something today. And thanks for sticking till the end. Like, really appreciate that. And yeah, there's just
Amir, one more thing. So the computed one reruns whenever the main data which you're accessing, that one is changed.
Yeah, so any variable that you used inside this function, if any variable changes, this will change. Okay, I'll give another example.
Like a watch on all of those variables?
Yeah, you can call it that. But it returns a single element. So that is the catch there. So it just returns the value of capital name. So if I do first name and I do last name, and I'll have to define these here. And I'll just do first name plus space plus. All right. Here I am using name.n, so I'll just make it this. So now whenever any of these variables will change, this capital name will run again. So if I do this, it will run. If I do this, it will run. If I again change this, it will run. So any variable that you use inside it, but it will return only one value. So it can't return multiple values in separate variables. Whereas watch, it will run only when you can assign it to, like, when one of the changes, but then you can set as many properties as you want. So for example, if the name changes to Veer, you set it to like age is equal to 21, or you get Veer's data, for example, from a database. So that's where watch comes into picture.
So are you saying that we cannot do anything else other than computing in the computer property?
Yeah, you can do, but it's not a good practice. Like generally what it's used for is just returning
Yeah, it makes sense.
some
The
sort
name
of
itself is just compute.
computation or a calculation, but you can run anything that you want here. A good example of watch will be, for example, you have a list of all the students in your college, and when you select a student, you have to load the data of that student from a database. So if there are 1,000 students, you won't be having 1,000 student data, like all the data is inside the same variable. So whenever this name changes, you just make a call and you can get the new, you can use the from variable and you can get the new student data. So that's an example of where watch can be used. Whereas computed, you can use it for calculations. Mostly it's used for calculations. So if there's like a, for example, there's a inch to mm converter. So I just make a computed variable called inch, and I do return this dot mm into whatever the conversion rate is. So it will just give me the inch variable to whatever I enter in mm.
Okay.
Okay, guys. I'll leave. Thank you. We can end this meeting now. Thank you so much for coming.